thesis drawing won commendations from Architizer and Tamayouz before going on in 2019 to win Archisource's Drawing of the Year. Since then, he has been managing his own design studio called Caleb Ong Design. Primarily, Caleb Ong Design assists small architectural firms with design-intensive residential projects. He is currently working towards his license as a registered architect in Malaysia. The screen is yours.
Yeah, a very good Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to everyone. Thanks so much for joining this session. Especially, I want to give a huge shout out, a big thanks to School of Architecture, to the built environment of the University College of Technology Sarawak. Thanks so much for inviting. Thanks so much for joining. So let's jump straight into it. I have 35 minutes to wrap up this presentation. So it has been a pleasure to be back in the same space with Mr. Ng, Architect Ng, which is the program director back when I was doing my master thesis at that time. This was like 2 years ago. Exactly 2 years ago. Then behind this presentation that I have. So Ng has been helping me to coin this thesis title, which is the Unending Square. I'll explain later on why that's called the Unending Square. However, another key person I would really like to thank, which is my main supervisor, my advisor, my mentor, Lee Cheng-yi. He has been giving me so many key advices that have been pivotal to my success or the breakthrough that I have in the thesis. I'll point them out. So I'm just going to be super honest in this presentation. I'll say whatever secret that I think I have hold and what I have thought through. The main topic, of course, is called drawing as a quest for knowledge. However, beside all this, I'd like to summarize in a way of the 10 things that you could do in your architecture learning journey. Yeah, and these 10 things might be common sense, but at my time when I was learning, these are key takeaway that has been life-changing to me. So the first key takeaway for me, which is theorizing drawing. At the moment, I'm extremely interested in drawing, and I'm asking the Cheng-yi what are the drawing that I could theorize. Whereby Cheng-yi, first of all, straight away recommend Bernard Tschumi's, where he himself has fallen in love in a drawing of it. It's related to fiction, related to film, related to causality, which are all my interests, and he has this wonderful reading that I've fallen in love with, especially the one at the left-hand side, the Manhattan transcript. That one inside the book, that's this drawing. It mainly focuses on event, space, and movement. The left column, which is the event, the middle column is the space, the right column is movement. So I get in very quickly, I identify what is my interest, and with a very good suggestion of reading, I straight away latch onto it. So I rely on existing literature. I use that as a leverage, and with the right theory, it has been incredibly helpful for me to jumpstart the process, and it kind of justify the research, and overall it provide a coherent research narrative for me. So we go towards the second key takeaway, which is the advices that I obtained to limit my research. Of course, this is an effort provided by the whole school at that time. There's Veronica, there's Mr. Ng, and they have been providing all this effect. So one of the strategy that I had at that time, I took a huge jump. I don't want to spend too much time on user group, on case study, whereby I pick the main client that we can all relate to, which is us, the creative class, the people who are like us, who is always working at home, on the go, going to the studio overnight, basically the lecturer, the classmate that I have. So whenever I presented as data, is straight away I can save the effort to do like data collection, questionnaire. I wanted to have the least effort on whatever aspect that I think is not within my focus. So I straight away eliminate all the things, and whatever I gather, as long as I make it, presented it as a believable, people will stop questioning of that. So I can spend all my focus on the drawing, the theory, whatever presented in the drawing. So whenever I explain the presentation, the user group is very quick. It's a creative class, which I was specifically studying co-working at the time. Okay, so the next key takeaway I had at that time, which is process emulation. This is basically from what I've done from the past. I find that it's very, very important to emulate the drawing, especially when we're talking about drawing theory. So I should we jump into the method transcript. This is method transcript. I try to draw my own self on my own, and I form my own kind of understanding. Because when I look into the reading and the drawing, there's this little space in between that is not clearly explained. I emulate almost exactly as I could to the original, and from there, I'm able to discover a lot of invaluable ideas and knowledge at that time. And I don't really think that much of what is the main objective. Is it going to be successful or not? No, I straight away jump into it because I learned about what is the extent of the shadow that I need to use, why the author use their own technique, why they use dark line, why they shadow certain part. So it's very important. By doing so, I'm able to understand what technique did the maker apply in producing the drawing. And then I'm trying to make a guess from what is the maker, what is his thought process while drawing the whole diagram, the storyline. And at the end, by doing this exercise, there's this huge gap in between his reading and in between his drawing. There's a huge gap that is indescribable. Things like all the little things which is very, very tiny yet have a huge impact. So I will just handpick. I was absorbing as much as possible, not making any sense at the time. It might not be coherent. And I try to abstract as much as possible that I think may be relevant to my study. I straight away jump into producing this kind of drawing at that time. The intention objective wasn't clear at that time. And I remember most of my peers, my classmates, my tutors, they don't really agree on what I'm doing, but I still proceed to do it. So I would like to hold on this slide for, let's say, 3 seconds. So I have to look at it, and then this is basically why I arranged it that way. The upper column, the roof, the wall, and then how the architecture relates to going upwards, and how the architecture relating to going downwards, along with floor element. These are what I try to use the same technique, which is like frame, the same drawing methods by exploring the topic that I'm interested in. And here I identify what are the main items that I want to focus on. The reason why I want to hold a few seconds just now is because I want to leave a little bit of gap so that you could interpret the drawing in your own. And that is quite important. The gap between the explain, logic, and also the drawing. And that is one of the magic part of drawing, because it allows to have that space for personal interpretation and multi-usage. Yeah. So I'll go to the next one, which is what I think is very important, is to take calculated risks. At that time, I'm thinking to go big or go home. I have full mental preparation of failing and not taking architecture anymore, because I was at that time the lowest mark in the whole course by presenting doing this kind of method which no one else in my classroom is doing. So I further take the courage. I know I kind of have the gut feeling. I follow my gut feeling. I proceed with the emulation with my interest. Since I already define my interest, I use frame, the architecture element that I want to focus on, and this is 2D. There's event, there's movement, there's plane, and then I try to extrude it into a 3D. This is what I have done at the time. They are both related. Of course, this is a test. There's no main purposes. How do I turn this into a thesis? How do I make sense of all of this? I leave it to the next. And all this process, I've been following my intuition. I was thinking a lot of things is meant to be imperfect, and I believe in doing first. Yeah, so the next thing I've learned from Cheng-Yi, which is very, very key to me, is to find as much objective truth, because I was having so many subjective thoughts at that time. So I was seeking the subjective to objective truth, which is functional. So at that time, when we are going through the same module of asking theoretical question, research question, we are asking the main thing is what could be functional, what could be used to the co-working space. So hereby this is a research question, the main one. In what way the architecture disjunction, which is the theory, provide multiplicity of reading to create a feature. The feature here is dynamic movement and interaction in the co-working community. The reason why this research question is written in this way because it is the simplest yet most believable feature. Because I have taken all the good things about the theory, the gap, I find a lot of things that I can pick on, and this is the one that me and my mentor Cheng decided to think that, oh, this is really believable. Yes, you have so many different pathway event, and it is to create dynamic co-working space. So this is the first semester. There's 2 semesters anyway for the thesis. This is the first semester what I've done. So I've used the same technique. I blow through all the theory, whatever I could find applicable to the co-working space, such as this diagram, like differences between all normal office spaces and co-working space. And then I further break down into the little part about the reading and what I discovered when I was doing all the emulation that might be relevant to the co-working space, such as this. But all of those, the common point of it is to create multiplicity of reading. I'll further elaborate later why is it relevant or how do I make use of it. So all of this is about the free reading, whereby we allow a chance for people to take their own interpretation, whereby from here a few strategies has been formed, like having multiple entry and exit. So they could walk, they will enter at both if let's say one is able to enter at both entry, they could form 2 possible interpretations of the space because they walk different paths. So this is about free reading. We allow what kind of strategy in the architecture we need. I'm trying to incorporate to allow that. Second is the functional reading, whereby what do you see around the space that give a hint of the possible event that could be allowed in the space. So the architecture be allowed at all points. You will not be able to have a full picture of the whole architecture, so you encourage more movement. What is the other sign that you could see to indicate event, like a bathroom indicate stopping point, a pantry indicate a place for people to talk, a fan, aircon space indicate people to stop by at that area. So all these little things. The perceptual reading, which is the third main theory body, which is how the visual could guide, let's say, circulation. How what you see in the visual beside event, what could be repeated to show multiple reading, such as what is the ground plane, like whatever you see an elevation could be referenced in a plan. Whatever you see from the path, the movement of the people, the number of the people will indicate, is it lunchtime, what is the event, and what is the pattern on the window indicate what direction you are facing, is it north, south, east, west. These are kind of theory. Then the last part, which is what I find fantastic about the Manhattan transcript, is that there's a lot of undefined reading. They leave a certain gap that allow people to have fictional construct, they interpret or building accordingly. And these are the particular diagram. All these I have put in detail in my other website and application. So from all this, another key, I'll jump straight into the next, which is the cross-referencing. You might notice a pattern going on right now. I'm trying to cross-reference the technique I learned in the Manhattan transcript, the technique, the pattern, the theory, as much to all body of work. So from now you see all is black and white, similar, maybe 2-3 line weight, and to the main body of the first half of my thesis. So for this image, there's different ground plane. It could be read from this angle, that angle, different ground plane. There's frame. There's all the theory that I wanted to apply early on, those little bubble diagrams, to combine into one. So from the frame, which you see here, the original Manhattan transcript, event, space, movement, I separate it out. So at the right is the movement, the center is the space, and the left is the event. Whereby from here, when I combine both together, you kind of notice that at the left, whatever you see shadow that's being shaded is being cross-referenced to the right. Whatever is being shaded at the left and the ground plane, everything. So whatever cross-reference is the outline and whatnot. So what I want to provide here, at the moment, what is relevant to the architecture. I mean here, the technique is referencing to what has been done previously. So going through what is the possible pleasure going through the building. Which is at that time, relevant to co-workers, there's always an excuse for everyone to go bring in their laptop, to go to every single corner in the co-working space to have a different view. And every space is having different experiences to provide perhaps a fresh start to the co-worker for them to work. And this is the model. So here is the second phase of the project, whereby previously we have a lot of the theory, right? So right now the main advisors coming in, it's too rigid. The project is too rigid. It's way predictable. It's constrained by the frame. So at that moment, I was trying to bring and improvise in a way that I want to throw all those out, and I want to go towards achieving the same feature, which is having no clear hierarchy of space, impossible to be read, many different entry and exit, interpretation, architecture element, and straight away jump into making a drawing as well. Of course, in this drawing, there's a lot of different detail that only me myself is relevant to me. I could really care about those elements a lot. However, those are irrelevant to the viewer. Of course, the next thing I want to highlight is that never be afraid of failing, because in this project I've been failing a lot, such as there's so many of this sketch which is entirely not being used at all. See, it's being thrown away straight away. However, all these have been archived personally. Such as I'm trying to use, what if I study the context? From here, the same process, I emulate the Yokohama Master Plan, OMA. I try to study the program. I want to see what is the extent of the program might inform design decision. I go into spending so much time looking into the study of the contextual element around the site, drawing same technique with the Yokohama Master Plan, whereby this whole process has been spread later on. It's not being used at all because most of the data is not relevant to the design. However, because it failed, this residue of this work has been used as evidence for my further justification later on, so that I show that I've done the effort and why certain context wasn't being reflected in the design. Then furthermore, I want to explore a fictional construct of certain element around the site. I reference the drawing method of Kanarigo Town Square done by Peter Hanselman. I've done this drawing. Again, it's not really useful, but however, I have done testing before I actually come forming that kind of conclusion. Such as I have done this space. Again, this achieve those clear objective. No clear hierarchy of space. Impossible to have a clear view of space. Many alternative circulation. A lot of elements that could referring with each other, and a lot of unpredictability in the site. I explore in 2D, in sectional, in plan, and I come up with this monster project, a full test whereby I get to know that all this attempt has been very useful for me to show how much I have tried to incorporate the site context. And then what I say, not all contextual element is relevant. And also further to reiterate, this is what I discover. When people show you diagram, like the famous architect, not necessarily they incorporate the context. Just because someone shows certain abstraction diagram doesn't mean that they incorporate the data or being truly contextual in their project. But apart from that, I've used this is a Google image. I use the same method. I identify what are the key axes and the key angle, the key contextual element that I want to incorporate in my project. This number 9. Later on, I will have a summary on all these items that I find is a big key away that I've taken in. So I want to have clarity with my goal. From here, the key angle that I abstracted in, I turn into key axes that I use in my project, which is to to the kata, to the north-south east-west, the site context in terms of the shop lot, because the site is consisting of 4 shop lot. So all those I have taken in, positioned in a way that all of this angle has been incorporated in the design, and this is the final outcome of the thesis project, which is the outlook of the project. So in terms of clarity, I want to explain in terms of the project representation. In this drawing, I highlight only the wall. Basically, I wanted to show how the building looks like, how the building will function purely on the wall, because the building have a very equally distributed level of high wall, mid wall, low wall, and this is how opaque the building goes. The darker it is, the more shaded it is. And then, of course, besides this, the program I equally distribute a lot across the building, such as fixed desks, hot desking area, the proximity from all area towards utility area, event space, and the level of privacy that they could control in the building. Whereby this is a pure highlight of my main focus, which is the movement. Because all of this, whenever you see a slanted element in the building, it indicates there's a staircase, it's an ascension and going downwards. And all of this cat ladder going around is the same as all the real road. They provide a fictional movement, which is whenever you see a real road, although there's no train going through, the mind you are able to imagine a train going through, same as a cat ladder, and all the little slide. They are not meant to be fully used all the time. However, when you are working with the laptop, you can imagine the movement going through all this area, which makes the space more dynamic. Whereby, if I were to summarize this building in a very simple manner, I want to create a sort of like a snake and ladder game to the co-worker, whereby they go to the space, they could create their own event every day, and it could be unpredictable, where there's multiple interaction. Therefore, the co-worker inside the building would be able to meet each other unintentionally, whereby this is the reason why the project was called the Unending Square. So regarding the consistency, I want to push the same consistency in terms of the drawing with the theory, all in black and white in pencil sketches, so they all be the same. This is the elevation drawing. Of course, I have the 3D, then I overlay on top of it and I sketch over it. This is how the model looks like, which I've brought behind as a little tools here. So from all the angles, this is how the building would be visualized with all the plan. There's connection with all the spaces being used. All this detail drawing I'm compiled in all my website and Instagram. Have a look in detail. There's a few criteria that I established for myself. I wanted to have each level to be there's a level of differences that I want to have, and then from a quick glance, I do not want the space to be easily read, so that it encourages people to go around the space, to know the surrounding, to say hi to all the co-workers, and the assisting people who have deep understanding on what is their own space. For example, this elevation, if I cut from one grid further, this is the section, what it looks like. Tall wall, deep, short wall, different accessibility. And then from the next opposite, let's say just 5 meters across, this is the section. The criteria that I set myself is that from each section, I want to have a certain level of changes. Whereby from when I look at this 9 section, it could be read as almost like maybe 5 to 8 buildings. Because the section, the variability of the section in the walls, the line weight, thick wall, slanted wall, I want to cap that as quality of the building. So this is the main drawing. There's an ISO, then it's cut off ISO. And this in detail. This is a full of it. And then for the cutoff section, XOR. Sorry about that. Yep. So this is the key XOR that I have submitted for Drawing of the Year, that have won prizes, and it's being sketched over this 3D. I've done the 3D, I've cut and exported the image out. I print it out and lay a butter paper over it, and then I sketch over it. So from the left hand side here, the ISO I've used 7 hours, the right ISO I've used 22 hours sketching over it. So in total it costs within 30 hours. This is the elevation, and from the elevation I want to remind what the technique, because I try to cross reference as much as possible. Like it might not be that obvious, but all the little plane column is relating back to the frame, the event, and what they could see, because those are the possibility that they could see. And each frame is almost as if I'm cut off from the other building. It's very hard to relate, and that provide further dynamic experience that encourage people to move around space more. Same with the technique that I used earlier on, frame. There's only one area that has this singular long area going upwards, which is the main leaf called the glass leaf. When you ascend the leaf, this is what you see. Again, this is a single space. However, every level seems different. And finally, the last point here, which I find very useful for me, because all this process, and even before I do my thesis, I've been trying so much to document and share my work. Therefore, I can show all these processes, and I have a very clear thought of explaining all of this. This is how it looks like, documenting my work. All the sketches I've done earlier on, I have video of the process, and so I lay the butter paper on it and I straight away draw over it with a video cam. And this is like the process that I've documented on my Instagram. One of the highlight here I find is very important nowadays is about the quest for knowledge doesn't end at the end of the presentation. Such as, simply because I document all this, I share and show the world. We are having an architecture discourse now over the Zoom. And the limit of sharing and asking for advice go globally. Can ask anyone else across the world to ask, what do you think about architecture, and what else could be done better. So these are the 10 things that you could do in your architecture learning journey. This is all the summary. So from theorizing drawing, to limiting the research, to having clear process emulation, take calculated risks, to seek objective truth, to cross-reference as much as possible, and sometimes improvise by taking away certain element, compromising certain element. And for me, is to getting used to failing, and to persevere with consistency in all the drawing, and lastly to document and share all this. If it wasn't me taking the effort to document and share, I would not be able to document this. This is like I could not do this anymore. I cannot do this second time. And this shows the process of me sketching over the printed images, which took a total of 22 hours. So all these video images I've been published I've uploaded all in the website www.calebong.com, and then it's being uploaded in Instagram calebongyw. Yeah, so that concludes my presentation. I hope you guys have written down some good questions for us to have a discussion. And if you are interested in any particular comment, or even if you have questions after this session, feel free to get in touch with me anytime. So thanks so much. I'm a little bit over the time.
I don't know whether to say thank you or OMG.
You're so kind. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I think this is just as powerful as what TJ has presented to us. Congratulations. And I'm still looking for questions on the chat. It looks like there are none at the moment. So perhaps I'll kind of kick off by asking a few while the whole experience of seeing what you've done goes into people's minds, and then they might just pop a question or two. Maybe I just, if you like, have you stopped sharing, Kevin?
Yeah, I've stopped the slide sharing.
Okay, if you stop sharing, then I should be coming back here. What am I doing now? I see the. Okay, I just want to come back to seeing myself, which I can't at the moment.
Wait, let me stop sharing.
Few options.
Yeah,
okay,
I've stopped
yeah,
sharing.
we're all back happily now. Yep, thank you, Caleb. Well, I guess because I have some history with you, hi, Daryl Vimping with your blue mask. Nice to see you. I recall in the middle of the year-long design thesis, which is called Advanced Design Thesis in Taylor's, after the final review, what Caleb told you is true. They wanted to kick him out of the course. Yeah, they wanted to say, fail, go home, And well, fortunately for him, I was the program director. So I said, no. You guys may be very good in building buildings outside, but you really don't know how to review, So thank you very much, yeah. So I said, no, we don't kick genius out. We just let them go through to the end, because one of the important points is that some thesis needs a very, very long time to gestate, to conceive, and to make into something which can be birthed into the world, and then develop as a real thing. So a lot of things happens in the minds in the minds of these people. So Caleb was one of them, and I think TJ probably will attest to that. That there was a lot of heavy theorizing in the early part. Yeah, you need somebody to understand your process, and I'm so glad that you mentioned heurism. Heurism is you do first. You don't have the complete building in your head. You just follow the process you do, and the building will come out in the end. So we're done for that. Would you comment, Caleb, on why you don't prioritize plan? You only showed your plan towards the end of your process. Is plan not a good way to design?
It is. It's very important, but of course there's time. I'm trying to make it chronological, because I think not only the end result is important, the whole process kind of important. I find what I learned, what I've done in the early stage, what I've done in the middle stage, I try to break it down into moments, into things that I find really useful at me at that time. Because for me, right, I also reduce down the detail of the project, because if too detailed, I'm not sure whether we got you as well. But in the plan, there's a lot of strategy that I've tried to incorporate.
Yeah, but like TJ, both of you seem to, if you like, favor the isometric and the maybe axonometric over and above, your typical plan sections, elevations, or even your rhinos and whatever 3D thing you do. Could you just elaborate a bit more why? Why is the isometric so important for you, Caleb? And then maybe we follow with TJ.
First of all, I want to put a disclaimer, because that ISO itself, I try my best to bring clarity. Of course, it's very chaotic, but at least a few key strategy. There's no other color. There's no sense of material. I want to take away the dimension of the material. I want to take the dimension of the time. I want to only show event, space, and I leave the movement up for fictional construction on everyone's mind. That's one thing. So that although it's chaotic, I want to show very clear, go back to very earlier, the first sketch, only those architectural elements that I want to focus on. And then it's very important for all of these, along with the context, external movements such as the railroad, the main road, all circulation related drawing to be all fully shown in one drawing. So the pleasure of reading the drawing, like going through all the little things, is what I want to achieve. And furthermore, of course, the little side secret is that the reason why I choose this user group, the reason why I've done it all these ways, because I always think that the academician, the architect, such as you and all of you guys here, would like to see this kind of drawing. I want to put it out this way because I don't think this drawing is as interesting to all the people outside. They probably would not care that much. So I clearly identified earlier in the thesis, this drawing, the main client is not co-worker. It's not co-working. It's the main client is actually the architect, the tutor, the mentor. I just want to bring this out. So this is the reason why I've done it this way.
If I may ask TJ to sort of put in his 2 cents on why ISO, EXO above other forms or instruments.
Yeah, I think there are actually many ways that you can present your ideas. And at the time when I had to pick a choice, that was like the fastest way to show a detail, I would say. Even the collage, I mean, when it comes to collage, when you put into perspective, the scale becomes distorted in so many ways. I think when you have some sort of a measurement, I would say, a 3D dimension of a form, not too detailed to the point that you don't know where to start and where to end. It's when you pick, I think, isometry, you kind of restrict yourself of what is important and what is not important. What do you want to show and what do you not want to show? It's very different when you look at it in 3D as well. So, well, my choice was like that was the fastest way to show the most information, I would say, in detail, in extreme detail. Yeah.
I think you both will probably appreciate a lot of us in the audience thinking that, my goodness, these drawings are so complicated. They're complex, they're complicated, and they look very difficult to put together. So we have a question here from Chia Wei Yui to both of you. Can you share some time constraint challenges in producing your work? I believe it means time saving. Maybe both time saving as well as what were some of the things that make it time consuming, and how do you kind of tackle that and find time saving ways of doing it? I hope Wei, I'm interpreting your question correctly. So Caleb?
For me, using the 3D model straight away, for me, it's time saving for my project at that time, because I can straight away export, I can sketch over it. Therefore, I can use only 30 hours of my life. Of course, I have certain confidence of my manual sketching skill and of course, all those come with the practice. For this particular project, I think I've started doing the production work 2 weeks before the final presentation. And then the model was exported. After model was exported, there's 2 weeks until the final presentation. So since there's no rendering, there's no need for color, all those time was taken out because of the consistency, clarity that I want to have. Those are time saving for me. And then the most time consuming part is where I'm trying to make a coherent connection across all these seemingly unrelated item elements, pull them all together into a thesis at the beginning stage, including the reading and the research. Those are very time consuming.
Okay, TJ, what's your experience like?
Well, for me, it's like the challenging part is to actually align yourself with your discourse, your idea. How do you keep drawing and then not kind of drift away from your main idea to begin with? So there's a lot of back and forth for me to kind of just go back to the original state of the whole drawing to see, okay, is this okay if I add this? And if this not, what should I do with it? And well, there were many versions, I would say. Initially, there was also an idea to have like a rocket in the building. That was like too much. And I mean, that in that sense, it doesn't, it makes no sense to have idea like that. So that was when I had to go back again and draw everything. At the same time, when I was drawing, I think the best thing about doing isometric also is that you can catalog whatever you have drawn in a proper archive, and then just kind of repeat and use them and distort them to wherever that it's supposed to go. I think yeah, these are the challenges, I would say.
Yes.
3 months.
I think it's okay to put a rocket in the building in Penang because they gave you that. So, you know. This would be for you, TJ. Louis would like to know, did you have any difficulties in presenting your final work because most of the illustration is detailed up in one big drawing? Was that a problem?
Was it for Caleb?
That's
or was
for
it
you.
Sorry.
That's for you.
Sorry. Right. Sorry.
Yeah. So let me repeat that. Did you have any difficulties in presenting your final work because most of your illustration is detailed up in one big drawing and not many drawings?
Yeah, this is one of the hardest thing. For example, when I archive, like when I had to put everything into a catalog, into a book, it's really hard to kind of, you know, explain every single detail that I had, and also while keeping like the timeline of this, the whole structure of this building. Yes, definitely there's the difficulty, but when I presented my work was actually hanged outside by the foyer while I was presenting through, presentation slides. The same way how I did it here, but in a more detailed way for sure, with a lot of examples so that somebody would understand. But yes, of course, it's extremely difficult when I have to jump from one area to like different section just to kind of prove a point. Yeah.
Okay, so there was some difficulty.
Yeah, it's always.
Okay, now here's a very long question, so it's for Caleb. So you better listen up. You can look at the chat if you want. It's from Yi Yang Chai, and sorry, is it he or she says, Caleb, sorry, I threw a rather theoretical question regarding to your literature, architecture, and disjunction. I still remember it raised a very impactful and intriguing topic, which discussed the relationship of violence in architecture. It is like analogous to rules to civilian, parents to child, predator to prey, order to chaos, and akin to architecture to its people, spaces, event, and movement. The term violence in this kind of relationship, which I interpreted, is not literal, but more of a primitive, latent, and unconscious power from one to another. I was wondering, does this relationship, was this relationship explored in your, I was wondering, does this relationship, was this relationship explored in your design thesis? I hope you understand that because I can barely understand.
Yeah. Violence is repeated so much. It's saying that architecture is only good if there's killing on it. So, I want to interpret. First of all, good question, Yang. Thanks for coming. When we talk about violence in a particular architecture disjunction is to create, what are the good benefit things that might come from things that is uncomfortable, that is negative, such as a long corridor. People is not comfortable for walking. However, because the corridor is so long, people will be able to see what is happening inside. So in my building, such as for my building, it is really bad in surveillance. That's one of the key weaknesses of my project, and also very hard to maintain because you have to clean so many corners. However, simply because it's so hard to surveillance, the space is very unpredictable, and it is a own territory of its own. Like you enter a jungle, you have to understand how the jungle works, the similar feeling. The assisting co-worker, they will know all the spaces, or this is the territory. So I'm trying to create a territorial feeling to the people. Of course, this project is only for those who are interested to have such an experience. It is not for everyone. So that is one part that is related to. When you say related to violence, when my understanding from what I've read, is part of what I could make good out of certain normally perceived weakness of architecture. Yeah, so that's one part of it. Of course, there's more. Thanks for asking. Anyway, for those who are interested to see who does a good work in documenting work and sharing the work, you could ask Yi Yang privately, because Yi Yang has done a fantastic job in documenting his work. Check him out. Thanks so much for coming. Yeah.
Okay, we're coming to 1.5 hours now, so I did say I want to finish in an hour and a half. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to pop one last simple question to each of you, and that comes from Hongria, Xiangri. Okay, fine. It's the same question, and after that, I have a little short announcement, and then we will end the formal drawing as a quest for knowledge. I will, and then you're free to go, all of you. But I'll leave this thing open for another 10, maybe 15 max minutes for those who still want to stay behind and chat with TJ and Caleb. So here you go. And the question to both of you is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Caleb.
I'm not super ambitious. I try to have long-term goal. Yet I'm very grateful. I think I'm super fortunate already with what I'm doing right now. Hopefully 5 years time, I'll get licensed architect, and I'll try to do some little project that I've been doing. At the moment, all my projects have been bungalow project. So perhaps that is one of the paths that I could specialize in. And I just want to get my first architect license first, and so we move from there. Anything else, I'm really very grateful for what I have right now. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Caleb. TJ, what about you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Mom is listening, so say.
Oh man, this is like peer pressure. Anyways, for me, it's a bit, I would say it's slightly complicated because right now I'm not in Malaysia. I'm not doing my part 3 in Malaysia right now. In fact, I'm practicing architecture in Germany, so it has this completely different set of rules that I'm learning. I mean, the thought of having all these things that I've learned, is it applicable back in Malaysia? That is a different set of question all over again. But I can see myself, I don't know, I'm really interested in academics, so perhaps I'll do my PhD someday, maybe 1 or 2 years. And then we'll see from there, I don't know. The next, that is something else, really. Yeah.
Okay, I hope you'll consider coming to teach in UCTS Sarawak.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, you two. Now, here's a little announcement. The next lecture coming up will be just as stunning in my view, and I hope you guys will be around. And here's a little teaser on what it might look like. The presentation will be called The Way of the Competitor. It will be held by Hefrans Chia from Singapore and by Alex Chia from Berlin, Germany. And the whole idea of this next lecture on the 30th of September, is to probe into the experience and the mind, and maybe even the strategy or strategies of people who either are at the top or want to get to the top, or have actually sort of won some stuff. It's about winning, really. It's about being awarded, it's about being recognized. And in the architectural world, this comes through, in academia, comes through winning prizes in mainstream, like TJ has. But when you're out there in the world, you can still go in for competitions. And you try to, I don't know what it is, I'm not going to preempt what they're going to say, So Hefrans has done quite a few competitions, and here's a little picture at the bottom of him, showing one of his latest competitions. And one of the latest, of course, the latest was Woha's Singapore, what do you call that thing, that circular thing with the SG on it thing. Yeah, he was part of the team. And Alex, of course, has a string of awards behind him. So of course, he won the year prize for justification as well. We'll be excitedly waiting for you two to come in on the 30th of September. And with that, I think we can say that this presentation is officially over. Thank you, TJ, and thank you, Caleb. Please feel free, for those who can stay, to chat with TJ and Caleb. Goodbye. Thank you for supporting UCTS as the design lecture. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, yeah, really.
Yeah, I hope you. Actually, I was going to make a comment just now that when you presented your final thing, of course I didn't listen in detail. I could only understand like 30% of it at a time. And I never had a chance to actually look at it so close and listen to you talk about it step by step. Every little icon is explained. So now I think I understand 75% of it. Yeah, it's really a phenomenal piece of work.
Thanks for the kind word, really, and all the help. I can't thanks enough. Oh, Chichong is the same.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, since we are off the formal lecture now, unmute yourself and just say a comment or ask TJ and Caleb whatever you want.
It will be off record, right, from now on, or is it still recorded?
Okay, I will stop the recording so that it can be quite informal. Where do I go? I come back to here. Yeah, don't worry. Carry on, and I will do the next.
Yeah, anyone have any further question? I'm just thinking, am I honest enough, or is there more things I should actually? I think I've covered all.
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job actually. It was very much into the. Now we know what happened behind the scenes, sort of thing, you know. When you show your drawings and you go around winning awards and posting Instagram, we see the finished product. But now we really know what actually you were thinking about when you were actually doing it. So that's, to me, very useful.
Thanks. Any assisting student taking thesis needed have some question to ask? Now is the time.
And of course, our dear friend Heavens is here, and Alex is somewhere in the background.
The Yig.
And Yig is here as well.
Eric and Labzan, can you guys please turn on your camera?
Oh, Labzan is here as well, my goodness.
Oh, Eldec, is it Labzan? I think so.
Of course. Is it Labzan, right?
Or maybe Kenzing, you have any comments on this whole experience? The speaking experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is phenomenal. I think this is like a really good way that we can get to know one another. I mean, to listen to new ideas and all. I believe you attend to some club every bi-weekly. I remember you telling me about like this sharing like community that you had with Man-In, I believe. I think this is like really important. I mean, not only for students, people who are interested in academics, that's for sure, and then people with experience working. I think 2 years later, when you're done with your project and when you have to come back and look at your thesis again, this is like phenomenal, I would say. And you don't really get this kind of chance. I think this is a good platform. You guys should like continue working on this.
Yeah, and the power of all this is that it could multiply. Its archive is there permanently. So right now it will just continue to multiply. Who will benefit from it will never know. Maybe 30 years later, someone might look at this video, come up with something, we don't know.
Of course, we in UCTS, this particular series is very, we're very clear what we're trying to do. It's number one for the benefit of our students, yeah, our undergrads and postgrad students. So that's number one. So using that as a generating thought, then how do we get new ideas into Cebu, which is kind of a bit away from the centers of architecture, so to speak. It's to actually invite you guys to come and share your ideas. So we are hearing it from the horse's mouth of people who have number one, achieved excellence, number two, have gone through lots of pain and failure, and number three, who have the experience from a different context away from Malaysia. And to us, that is important to enrich our already rich culture here. We have a lot of indigenous culture hidden. Tropical culture, tropical rainforests, and stuff like that. So we're just trying to build up what we can actually chew on, to make architecture. Yeah, so that's our agenda. And as I mentioned earlier on, we like to sort of stay in the liminal, the in between, which is not. I don't think I'll invite big angles here. Not that I don't like his work. There's a lot of his work we like people who are between education and hitting it big, sort of that zone, so to speak. Because there's a lot of rounder experience in it. As I said, heartache and achievements, and kind of maybe in a hit and miss way. maybe in an accidental way, sort of thing, you know. Yet your minds are still very much soft, so to speak, and wanting to theorize. But there are lots of good architects who theorize as they practice and make award-winning buildings. But this is the zone we're in, and something that our own students can relate to really, really well. Yeah.
Maybe I should ask some further question, like, do you, when Kenzing, when you were starting this project, the Penang 2095, do you actually, back in your mind, you're hoping someone will actually shout to you that, no, it doesn't make sense to preserve all this, it doesn't make sense to follow all this context. Do you have that in mind, or no?
Definitely. I mean, like, this is what I say, like, the critics between, I mean, the debate between me and my critics at the time was very heated, I would say, because you're supposed to only present your work for, I don't know, half an hour, but I did it for like almost an hour. That is like the longest time, because most of the time it was the back and forth of like how crazy and how ridiculous my methods of preservation was. Like, I took it to the extreme. I mean, it has to be done in that way, because otherwise you wouldn't make a point. So, oh my God, I'm so far away from what I was thinking. What was the question again?
No, that was the question that answered my thinking. Because,
Okay, all right, sorry.
yeah, because one thing is that while I was doing this Unending Square, my thesis project, I'm trying to learn what I hate, because the whole thing about this whole project, right, I actually hated it, you know. That wasn't something I wanted to do, but I want to learn as much from what I hate. That's why I pursue the theory, whatnot. I want to understand what is the contradictory, what are they thinking. So therefore, this has been very fruitful for me. And I want to add a note from there, because from this project onwards, I do spend further time looking into co-working, and I've designed an interior space for a working space. It's a new office where they renovate a building. They want to make it co-working. So my very honest feeling about this co-working things is that when I analyze, especially when I analyze the whole thing, it's not really that good. It's not working out at all. And there's a lot of pretentiousness in co-working culture right now. I want to put it honest and brutal outside. Yeah, there's a lot of negativity. It doesn't work that well. So to me, in one way, I do not really fully support the thesis. However, the strategy and theory whatnot, there are many rooms for further exploration.
It's definitely. I mean, the same mentality that, I mean, experience, I would say, not mentality, but the same experience that I had was, I was never like a conservatist, I would say. I would never, like, in any way think that, you know, one building should stay because of a certain reason. Because all I look for in my discourse, or maybe my thesis, was to move forward. But it was, I mean, it was an interesting time when I put myself to do what I despise, then again learn from it, like the importance of preservation, and how do we move forward from it. You see? So yeah, you have to put yourself in really weird situation. I mean, of course, after when you're done, when you look back at your thesis, you kind of understand how it works in reality. Well, I would say that my thesis would never work in reality. That's the beauty of it. I would say it's just it's not a utopia as well. It's a growing manifesto, basically out of OMA's preservation is overtaking us. It's just the whole thesis itself. It's based on that, and it grows. I mean, if you were to look at it in different perspective, if I were to take like preservation less likely, or even to take the progressive mentality less likely, right? I mean, then you will never get like what was presented. It would be completely different, I would say. So it's where you stand, and then how do you reflect after? Yeah.
Look at Daryl. Daryl is sitting in the train.
Are you in the MRT or whatever? Just
Yeah.
do a V if you are.
Yeah. Anyway, Tenzing, let me ask you a question. Because I was looking at through your Instagram, I think you have tried emulating. I'm not sure whether are you emulating the constructivist drawing. Is that during the thesis year or is it after?
It actually started when because I was reading a lot of different kinds of approaches in doing a thesis. So definitely I've also proposed deconstructivist illustration. I did basically, what I did was I took a master planning of Penang and I extracted all the walls the same way how you did, I isolated the walls and I was looking at the potentials of just preserving the walls and to demolish everything. What kind of building will I get at the end of the day? So I started with all these lines, extruding them, and distorting them towards the end. And it ended up like looking extremely similar to a deconstructivist building. This is how I, in a way, stumbled upon deconstructivism. I was studying about Zaha Hadid's like painting, of course. And when I presented it in the first phase of the research thesis semester,
Yeah.
my professor was like, PJ, you're going way too far. Just take a step back. Let's look at this all over again, And
So it was.
yeah, I mean, since then I got like hooked with this expression in art. So I just continue doing it since then.
So it was during the semester year.
Exactly.
In your book, does this process of exploring the deconstructivist, like what you said just earlier on, the master plan into wall into building, is that being documented in your book or in the issue?
No,
Is
no.
there any particular reason? Yeah, why isn't that being included? The process.
Well, when I was documenting, like archiving and like cataloging all the drawings that I had for the book, I didn't want. I mean, there were many missing informations. I would say that is not there exactly. If I do have the time, definitely I will update them in a longer version because the book itself was like 140 pages of just details, just to explain the details. You see, and there are many external factors that I did not want to add because I think, in my opinion, I think it would dilute like the pure intensity of details. This is why I
Yeah,
did not add anything.
yeah, that's true. But however, is for all the students, there's still the process of trying to understand the style of the drawing, going through the process. So, like what you described just now, it wasn't in the Instagram, right? The
Yeah,
building.
that was it.
Yeah, so all these are like juicy new specials info right here. Yeah,
Yeah, it
it
could
just,
be,
it just
could
make
be,
me
could
wonder.
be documented. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the attempts, processes. I was trying to find out, is there other question possible that might be useful for the student? Maybe the question to Ian is that how do we make students ask more questions to help themselves?
Yeah, no, I haven't found the answer to that question yet. So if you know, you please share with us. But I think
However,
naturally we're all a little bit shy, sort of thing, and we're all afraid that we are asked a stupid question. So we will prepare us. But there's no such thing as stupid questions because all questions come from want to know. So if you want to know something, you want to know it from where you're at. You can't want to know something from a high philosophic level because you're not at the level. So it's okay to ask from whatever level you're coming from. So yeah, so there. And actually, I wanted to come back to what the teacher said, which is a very big question, and that came on when you said when you asked yourself the question, do I want my building to be built? And I was kind of sort of disappointed that you said no, but I understand. You explained it. You said no, I don't want it to happen. But then the redeeming factor, you said the thesis is for stating something. So I think stating something. That's what you said. Yeah. I think maybe that helps to understand uh, this thing that always bugs us when we look at something like this Penang 2095 thing, or maybe even Jack Engel's fancy island thing. Do we want this to be built? If I were to answer the question for Penang 2095, I would say if you gave me a choice between Comta and Penang 2095, I will build 2095. I'd rather see that thing than Comta. Yeah? And that's not to say Chongqing is not a good architect. He was good in his time. But if you look at your 2095, Comta is a little bit in the middle.
It was supposed to be way smaller, but I don't want to
that I don't know whether people sort of saw the irony of it. The concept is modernism, basically, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
and you had it right in the middle after the mutation thing. As your tower went up, you had a small part which was modern.
Yeah, yeah.
You call it the break, so to speak. So, in a sense, it's a, by using that modernism in that sort of intermediate part, you're also making a cynical criticism of modernism and
Yeah.
therefore of Comta, meaning to say that kind of architecture is not rich. Yeah. So if it's not rich,
Yeah.
it is neutral. If it's neutral, you use it in the break. Yeah. All the rich stuff is at the bottom, and then the bottom part is the old rich stuff, and after the break is your new rich stuff. You know what I mean? And you inverted it so that you have a kind of benign inside out sort of thing. But that brings me to what I'm trying to say, and that is that thesis projects are all actually about, as you said, making a statement, saying something. Yeah. So your building say something, but a lot of people don't know what you're saying. So that's why you need to have this way to explain what you're trying to say. But even as a building itself to be built, to be put out there, it is still really very nice. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well,
Your opening slide, when you showed your building with the content in the background, I wish we had taken a poll here, you know, which building would you want to see, Bernard, if you had to build a 60 plus story tower, and let's see what everybody chooses, you know. I think very few people would choose Comtown, really. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that is like clearly what I was trying to say as well. You know, like, are you trying to create something that has some sort of a relation, even the slightest relation to our culture, to our past, to our history, or do you want something that is completely alienated? For example, like all those buildings that you see in Malaysia, no offense, but all these buildings development that you see in Malaysia, how much does it really represent us in a way? And the counter that statement is, where do we stand? You know, do you really want to represent like the past, or do you really want to represent something that is very foreign, that is new, that works maybe better than what you expect the past to provide? So, and going back to, I mean, this building as a statement, it's then again a conjecture. It's not supposed to be an answer to anything at all. It's supposed to open up questions, like questioning how we are treating existing building, how do we design buildings, how do we preserve buildings. And I took everything into an extreme measure just to put out that statement. But then again, it's something that, you know, I don't wish to see. I hope that, I mean, if I had the choice of designing something, I would definitely go like extremely crazy and just disregarding it. It's very futurist, I say pro futurist
Tenzing, may I ask
design.
what is your do you have dissertation and what is the topic of the dissertation? How does it really contribute to the design of the Penang 2095? The dissertation is, how is it related to the Penang 2095? The dissertation. Is it very important? The dissertation to you in relation to Penang 2095?
It's an open question, I would say. It's not like a, there's no sorts of importance to it, I would say.
Okay.
Because like, then again, it should be ambiguous. We should question everything that we do. Even like when the tower is being drawn, I'm still questioning it. Like, if that would really work, if this is something that I really want, you know.
Yeah, because I find my own thinking about deconstructivists is such as like, they find all this, like what you do, what you did, they have this element that they incorporate in the design, like such as the City of Culture done by Rita Eisenman, find a few diagrams, then saying that because of this diagram, the building is contextual, just same as Penang 2095. If I do the bottom layer with cross-referencing with the contextual element of Penang, oh, now I can call this building contextual. This kind of execution being ambiguous because we truly do not know where the architect stands. The architect could be really, really sensitive to the people, shouting, oh, we need to be contextual. Or he could actually, oh, I want to actually sell this evil corporate building with this contextual diagram. And from us, there's no way that anyone will be able to judge what are the percentage of incorporation of context in the building, because all are diagram, all are abstraction. How to evaluate? No one could. And that's my take on this approach, which relates to what you said, the ambiguity.
Yeah, it depends on where you stand at the time when you're judging it. I could be, from a standpoint of somebody who likes old buildings or even heritage building, I would say definitely this is abomination. This is crazy. Like, what are you doing? But somebody who really takes, in the same position, somebody who takes preservation seriously, they would maybe appreciate it. You will never know. So,
but you see, I could have done a glass tower with no reference at all. But at least I have these contextual responses. So people would, both sides, people won't really know what you stand for. That's why I asked earlier the question, do you secretly want people to actually throw objection? That kind of thing. Because the beauty of deconstructivist theory is also allowing this ambiguous. So on all sides, towards the corporate people, towards the local people, they could potentially win both sides. People truly guessing whether are you buying contextual or not buying contextual.
It's okay. For example, I give like this really vague example, right? So imagine a guy born in Germany. He has like 1/4 of Penang blood, right? So when he goes back to Penang and he decides to live in Penang, can he call himself like a Penangite? It's the same. It's how much of the threshold that you're deciding, where do you consider your values? If you think, for example, like you say, a glass tower with just a Chinese shop house, that is like the same mentality of saying this person is 1/4. Maybe I can consider him a Penangite, maybe not. But it really depends on how you want to look at this glass tower with that Chinese shop house as a reference. It really depends. Am I clear?
So Darren asked a question here. How have you ever had self-doubt, Tianjin? And like, that's the first question. Maybe you want to answer that first. Do you have self-doubt? Daryl. Yeah, the Wuhan
Daryl.
Okay.
The Daryl in train.
In the bus.
Oh, it's a bus. Okay. Yeah, so do you have self-doubt? And yeah, because the second because it's about the question. The next question is how do you overcome it? Then the third one is how do you respond to critics? Then the fourth question is what kept you going. So there's 4 questions there.
Let's go. You want to go? You want to start with it, or do I?
No. It's in the chat. It's up to how.
Okay,
which
guys,
one you want?
Sorry to be a party pooper. I have to close this in 2 minutes because it'll be 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
let's do this.
Well, of course, there's a lot of self-doubt for sure. I think one of the guys who really pushed me was Professor Ivan Kuchina. He was the one like giving me crazy ideas. Like you could have, do it in this way, in that way. A lot of references that he gave me kind of just pull me back in line instead of like drifting off. While Professor Justice Seppel, he was more like, okay, this guy's set. He knows what he's doing. And then when I have questions, he will tell me like what to do. For example, initially I was thinking like, should I give like the right dimensions or scale? And my professor was telling me like, TJ, nobody gives a damn about like the size of your wall. Nobody gives a damn about the scale of everything. Just draw it as it is. How do you interpret the building? Distort it, make it go crazy, that's yeah, that's what kept me in line, you know, just go crazy with it.
I want to provide a short answer to that. So, relating back to what you asked just now, Ian, like asking stupid question, right? So there's this high fruit. There's this high fruit. What you want to achieve, what you want to learn. So there's this high fruit. What is more important? What you care about, what other people think, what your critic thinks, what other people think, or achieving this high fruit of knowledge or the thing that you want to pursue. Asking the question, I can learn what I want. The places, the grade, the financial whatever, that might be secondary to you. So if you want good grade, follow the guideline, follow what you want. If you want phases, don't ask question. But if you want to truly have a very clear clarity on the fruit that you really want to eat, then that's what kept you going, what kept you going through the critics, and you have no self-doubt because that is the only thing that you want to get, see? So that is my answer to that question.
Okay, with that, I will say thank you guys for our awesome, fantastic, super duper wonderful session, 2-hour session, and let's connect outside of this, and let's look forward to Alex and Heverance's presentation in about a month's time. So
Before you end, do follow the website, University of College Technology Sarawak. Do support the School of Built Environment if you find it beneficial. Follow it, and yeah, thanks so much, Ian, for inviting us.
You're most welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Okay, good night. The meeting ends now.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Back to work.
Bye. Thanks, Ian.
Okay.
Thanks for engaging.
And we'll go to sleep this side. Try then. Bye bye.